Okay, welcome to Positivity Bias. We're looking at chapter 14, and chapter 14 is it's a fascinating question, really, and it's it's a fascinating question. The question becomes down to, and I'll give this spoiler alert ahead of time. Bottom line is you can't shovel out the darkness, but if you bring in light, the darkness will dissipate of its own. And that's the imagery that I want to walk away with from the class. You can't shovel out the darkness, but you can bring in light and the darkness will dissipate. So there's this constant struggle between the Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer Tov. And the imagery for that one is the old cartoon about the devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other, right? So we are naturally schizophrenic, Jewish people, because we have a godly soul within us that only wants to do good things and spiritual things and connect with God and reveal godliness in the world. That's our godly soul. That's where we always want to be at. But then there's the fact is this godly soul is stuck inside this animal soul, which is stuck inside this body. So the only way that the godly soul can actually accomplish anything is through the animal soul and through the animal, the physical body. All the mitzvahs we do, they engage, we have to do something, right? You have to light the Shabbos candles, you have to light the menorah, you have to put on the tefillin, or, cook kosher food, keep the pots and pans separate. All those things, they're doing things. And even the auditory things like prayer and confessionals and things like that, even those, we have a standing concept in davening and in Torah learning that machshava, thought, is not the mitzvah. You can think all the things about the prayers that you'd want to do, but if you don't say them, you did not do the mitzvah. So there's a biblical command to say the Shema Yisrael prayer morning and night. You can think it, you didn't do anything. You got to actually do something. And we're learning in Tanya right now about the idea of the mitzvah is the body, and the emotions that go behind it, the kavanas, the intentions behind it. Those are the wings of the mitzvah, and take it on high. But you have to do the mitzvah, and that's an action thing, even if it's the prayer and Torah study, the lip moving of your lips and the actual
do you have
audiation.
Do you have to do the mitzvah because that's what tradition says, or is it written someplace that you have to do it?
Right. So, for example, the Torah commands us to say the Shema Yisrael morning and night. It doesn't say think about it. It says to say. Right. So it's the commandment, the doing commandment. But at the same time, we say that a mitzvah done without kavanah, without intention, without thought, is like a body without a soul. Yeah, it's a body, but it doesn't go anywhere. So it has to have the mitzvah, the fulfillment, but at the same time, there needs to be intention at the same time with it. So the question becomes, what's the best route to do Torah and mitzvahs and manage this schizophrenic relationship with the body and soul? And so one of the questions is, we talk about, should we invest our energy in securing a good, solid line of defense, or in launching an early and bold offensive? So should we focus on sur meira v'aseh tov? There's a biblical comment about turn from evil and do good. Well, that would suggest, as Rabbi Aryeh Leib, one of the Hasidic masters, that would suggest that first you turn from evil and then you do good. So create a good defense and avoid all the machinations of the evil inclination. And that will be a good defense, and then you can focus on the Torah and mitzvahs, right? But the Alter Rebbe, the Reb Shneur Zalman of Liade, he said, essentially, he said the best defense is a good offense. He didn't quite quote that term, but but his point was that if you're so busy doing mitzvahs, you don't have time for other stuff. My Zaydi, my grandfather, he passed away on Simchas Torah. He passed literally on Simchas Torah. And what I found out, this was probably what, 80, 82, 81, 1981, something like that. When I was in yeshiva at that time, and I learned that Talmud says that a person who dies in the days following Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, when you're busy with Sukkot and Simchas Torah, it's as if God accepted your tshuva, your repentance on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and didn't give you a chance to mess it up. Because we're so busy on Sukkot and Simchas Torah with positive mitzvahs that we didn't give you a chance, right? But that's the answer. That's the Hasidic. That's the answer from Chabad, is that if we're preoccupied with doing good things, if we're preoccupied with mitzvahs and Torah learning, then we don't have time to be thinking about other stuff. I remember there was a turning point in our lives. We had been married for about 7 years. We were in Long Beach, California. He was late 89 or early 90. And the bottom fell out from the Hebrew Academy where I was teaching in Long Beach, California. The CEO had gone through some personal challenges. His wife had passed away, leaving him with like 10 kids, 11 kids. And he was the fundraiser for the entire academy, running Orange County Chabad. And he had lasted for a year or two like that, but then he resigned. And all of a sudden, there were a number of us that found ourselves unemployed because there was no funding to keep it up, and there was no fundraiser to help expand it. So I had to make the decision: do we stay in Long Beach, California, and get a day job, or do we try and stay in Klei Kodesh, spiritual work as a rabbi, either as a teacher or some type of rabbinical work, right? So my wife and I, we met with a mashpia, a mentor, and one of the things he talked about was that we all have challenges in our morning prayers, keeping our thoughts focused on the prayers. If you're in business, your mind is going to wander off into the business, and you're going to be thinking about how to make more money. But if you stay in the rabbinical world and you stay busy as a rabbi, you're going to be worrying about, how do I get Jeff into tefillin every day? So your mind stays focused. Yes, you're not focusing on your davening, which, because we all have trouble with that. But at least when your machinations are going off, it's on spiritual good things, right? So if you're busy every day doing Torah and mitzvahs and acts of goodness and kindness, and that's your work, then you're constantly thinking about those things. And when your mind is distracted from your morning prayers or your Torah study, it's not going to go where it could go, right? So again, the idea is that if we focus on the offensive strategy, staying busy with Torah and mitzvahs and doing good things, then we don't have a whole lot of time to sur meirah, turn from evil, because we don't have time for it. We're busy. We're just too busy. There's a story that's brought up here that the great Talmudic sage Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was a very fascinating character because he was at a time of the destruction of the Second Temple, and there was this concept that the Jewish people and Torah and the land of Israel are one. They're united. They're inseparable. If a Jew leaves Israel, can he really study Torah? Can he really be holy outside the Holy Land? And so there was a struggle of, do we stay under the conquest and suffer the challenges, or do we escape the tyranny and try and set up a Torah world someplace else? And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, as the leader of the generation at that time, he made the decision to move to Pumbedisa, and to Babylon, and establish Torah academies and continue Torah study there in Babylon in exile. On his deathbed, he wasn't sure he made the right decision. But he made a decision and he went with it. And he spent his life dedicated to Torah study, even in Bavel, even in exile. Not sure it was the right decision, but he made his decision and he went with it. And he was so busy that at the end of his life, when he was on his deathbed and his students were gathered around him, he said, I don't know which way I'm going, insinuating heaven or hell. I'm going to heaven because I made the right decision to build a Torah academy outside of Israel, or am I going to go to hell for taking the Torah out of Israel? I don't know. Now, 2,000 years hindsight, we know he made the right decision. We're here today because of that. We're still around, right? But he wasn't sure. But
how do you know there wasn't a wrong decision?
How do we know it wasn't a wrong decision?
No, how do you know there wasn't a wrong decision? If he would have stayed in Israel and tried to establish something in Israel, the outcome could have been, different, but it could have been good too.
Quoting our sages, I won't take this on my own shoulders. Quoting our sages, we know he made the right decision because we see that we're all still around today. It was because of him that we were able to continue, right? So that's not my quote.
No, it was because of a Kodesh Baruch Hu.
That's it. That's right.
Yeah.
Divine blessings, right?
Yes.
So that's the thing. We have to focus on the positive, and our diligence and our efforts has to be on the positive things. And the subtlety that happens here, right? Sur me'ra aseh tov. Turn from evil or do good. If I spend my day turning from evil, I'm still focused on evil. My whole day is spent on trying not to do the wrong thing and trying to avoid my mind, for example. Let's talk about machshava zaras, idle thoughts or evil thoughts. We're human beings. Ideas come to mind, like I want to throttle that kid or things like that. And so these ideas, we're human, they come to our mind. Do I focus on keeping those thoughts out and not allowing those thoughts to come to my mind? That's a lot of effort. And the whole time I'm still thinking about the negative stuff. So the Alter Rebbe in Tanya, the Alter Rebbe talks about when bad thoughts come to your head, you have three choices. You can either invite them in for tea, or you can stand at the door and scream and yell at them, or you can think about something else. The first two, the thoughts are going to come back because they got energy. The only way you can reduce the thoughts from coming back is by changing your focus on something else and focusing on those good things and those positive things and the opportunities to do more Torah and mitzvahs. And your mind is then functioning the whole time on more Torah and mitzvahs, more acts of goodness and kindness, more positive thinking. So by rejecting the negative thoughts, not giving them even the time of day, turning away from them and you're back to them and thinking about something else, then we're focusing our energies on good things. Now, again, sometimes that's easier said than done, but that's the goal. That's the goal. And again, best defense is a good offense. So the more we focus on Torah and mitzvahs, then the less energy is given to the klipa, the sitza acha, the evil side of things, and it slowly loses its energy and dissipates. How much? Well, we started off with the idea that you can't shovel out the darkness, but you can bring in light. And physically, we see that a little light dispels a lot of darkness. You can have a huge auditorium that's completely dark, you can't see anything, and you light a single candle, and you can make your way safely through the room. How much more so if you add more and more light? So that becomes the goal. How much light can we add? How much goodness can we do? How much can we focus on bringing more stuff in, right? So the other day, I was doing my morning davening, and in my mind, I was thinking about the to-do list that kept growing, and I had so much, there was no way I was going to get all this done. I was just trying to tackle some of them during the day. My mind was, let me just get through the davening, the morning prayers, and let me get to work, right? But then another thought came to mind, the little angel on the shoulder that said, you have a lot of people you have to reach out to and contact today. You could reach out to all those people and get voice messages and not actually reach a single one of them. Or with divine grace, with God's blessings, you might actually reach these people the first shot and get a lot of stuff done all within a short amount of time. But that divine grace is only going to come if you spend your time in your morning prayers properly and you do your morning Torah studies properly, and then you'll get the blessings that'll come for the success in the rest of the day. And so I focused back on my prayers. I got to tell you, I got through to a couple of wonderful people, and it was wonderful. It was beautiful, right? So we can focus on the negative thoughts, or we can focus on the positive things. But the more we focus on the positive and the good use of our time, then the more good things can come out of it. And we can be so preoccupied that we don't have time for the negative things. That's the goal.
No time for sin.
Jump in.
No. That was called no time for sin. That part of the
Yes, exactly. And again, we steps at a time. You know, we can't do everything all at once, but at the same time, as often as we can redirect ourselves towards positive thoughts and positive things, we can do a tremendous amount. But the time we spend in aggravation and negativity, it's not constructive. It's not constructive. So stop and ask ourselves, okay, my mind wants to go to the belly aching, kvetching, but what could I actually do with this time to do something productive? I was on a conference call earlier today, and for the first 5 minutes, we're waiting for some critical people to join the call. So the rabbi in charge of the call said, let's say Psalms. Let's say Psalms, and let's bring about some prayers for the people in Israel, the return of the hostages, the health of the... We turned that 5 minutes that could have been twiddling thumbs, getting nothing done, to a minion saying Psalms together.
that rabbi should have been an NCO.
So again, every time we have negative thoughts or aggravation, is it productive? Is it going to do anything? Is it going to accomplish anything? Can we turn that time around and do something very productive? I know that I've seen it in school, for example. We had in school, and I was in teaching a class, and it was a class that oftentimes had at least once a week there would be a fire and police sirens going through right by the classroom, very loud, right past the school and very loud, and it would disrupt class. But I could also see that it was disruptive emotionally for the kids, because then they were thinking about, well, what's the disaster? What's the crisis? What's the problem? And so we basically, every time the ambulance would come by, we'd stop what we're doing and we'd say Psalm number 20, a prayer for whoever's involved in this that they're responding to, and then we go back to our studies. And it was tremendously calming for the kids. They were able to, here's a crisis going on. I don't know anything about it, but I could stress about it. I could get nervous about it. Let's do something constructive. Let's add some light to the world. We did that. Now let's go back to what we were doing. And so it's a very effective tool to handle that weekly disturbance of class. So again, do we focus on trying to stop the negative thoughts, or do we focus on add the good things in, and the light will dissipate the darkness in and of itself?
Wait, didn't they do something different? Not that? Aren't you taking what you say is take the Yetzer Hara and make it do good? So in that case, with the sirens going off and it being agitating to people, their Yetzer Hara is rising up. But you took the Yetzer Hara and said, you're rising up for this. Okay, we're going to do this about it. So you were taking the Yetzer Hara and making it do Psalms.
Yeah, exactly. So when we think about the idea of the godly soul inside the animal soul, inside a physical body, who's leader? Who's running the show?
God.
And they're good. Thank you, Bob. And therefore, if we have the godly soul actually having an impact on the animal soul and the physical person that could have been distracted to something else, but no, let's use all that energy. Let's use the energy of the animal soul and the physical body itself and make it productive. We say in the Talmud that you could take have a goring ox, right? But you harness the ox. Ox can be the ox can be a very dangerous animal. But if you harness it, the Talmud says there's many harvests to the power of an ox. So you can be very productive by putting a plow on it and harvesting the land. So it's can be very, very, very productive, right?
So the idea is to not completely diminish the Yetzer Hara, but take the Yetzer Hara and make it do good.
Yes. Yes. And so we'll pause for just a second and come back to the stories, but the Kabbalah has an example of the story of the harlot. So what is the story of the harlot? So there's a king, and he has the crown prince, and the king is trying to help the crown prince grow up and be strong. So the king hires one of the best harlots in the kingdom to chase after the crown prince, to seduce him. So the goal of the king is that the crown prince should become stronger and reject her, her attention. That's the goal, right? And we hope that the crown prince will be strong and will do just that. But
this is a king.
Kabbalah, the Kabbalah wants to ask a deeper question. What is the thought process of the harlot? We're not talking about a two-bit street lady. We're talking about a professional. She is thinking. She has a mission from the king. She is a subject of the king. She has a mission of the king, and she has to do her job, and she has to do it right. But woe unto the entire kingdom if she should succeed. So within her, even though she has a job, even though she has this mission, deep within her, there is this intensive feeling of, I hope I don't succeed. I hope he doesn't fall for it. Because the future of the kingdom is important. So that mashal, that parable, is God's people. God sends the Jewish people, the crown prince, and we're out in the world, and he sends the Yetzer Hara after us. But the Yetzer Hara is meant to challenge us, not overcome us. Deep within the Yetzer Hara, there is this knowledge that it's not good for anybody if it succeeds. It has to do its job. It's commanded by the king. But God forbid it should succeed. So when we have the animal, we take that animal, we're able to channel good, even the Yetzer Hara is ultimately happy. But it still has to do its job. The example that's one of the examples from the book was the college student, Dov Lent, who he was going off to college, but he was concerned that he might get caught up in the whole college scene and the immorality that's involved in everything there. And so he wrote to the Rebbe for advice and for a blessing. And the Rebbe said that rather than be influenced by, be an influencer. Don't be a sponge soaking up the environment, but be so wet with godliness that you impact the environment itself. And he took that to heart, and he started getting involved in Jewish youth programs, Jewish programs on campus, and made a huge impact on the Jewish community at the campus. So again, taking the challenge and making the best of it. Then there's the story of the yeshiva student who was he was challenged, had a certain challenge in his behavior that he wrote to the Rebbe about, and the Rebbe's response was essentially saying, "You're too good for that. Realize what a great person you are, and that would be beneath your dignity." And
Is it
once,
the kid that liked to raid the fridge?
say again,
Is it the kid that liked to raid the fridge?
yes. He realizes
You know,
that,
I saw a lot of myself in there. I used to always do that at home too, but I never thought it was a problem.
there's the other story about the guy who was watching television. He gets up every 10-15 minutes to go to the refrigerator, opens the door, stands there, looks at it, closes the door, takes nothing from it, and goes back down and sits down. About the third or fourth time, his wife says, "Nothing has changed in the refrigerator. Why do you keep going up and looking at the refrigerator?" He said, "I'm just lowering my standards each time."
Oh.
And increase the electricity bill. Very good.
Yeah, so
His wife might not want to stock the refrigerator anymore.
There you go.
Exactly. So we want to focus on the positive things, and again, best offense is a good, best defense is a good offense. Focus on godly things and spiritual things.
Can't that be said for Yankee with his sense of humor?
Yes, we've talked about that before, absolutely, but not on recordings. We don't talk about that. So the idea again comes down to the koichas, the energies that we have. Do we spend them on fighting evil? Or do we spend them on doing more good? And I think that's the focus. And you'll see, Chabad's method at all times is to add more light. When something, God forbid, tragic goes on, we mourn, we count our losses, but then we turn around and say, our response has to be add more light, do more positive things. If something was destroyed, let's build it up 5 times the size. Always coming back that with every setback, let's increase 3-fold, 100-fold. So we meet that response. And I think we've talked about this previously also, the idea of if someone is getting down, and I'm not talking about clinical depression, a chemical depression. I'm talking about if someone is just getting depressed, life is overwhelming, and it's just getting depressing, right? What can they do? Find something constructive, find something positive. Think about somebody else's needs and fulfill those things. And when we are so busy taking care of someone else, we tend to lose track of our own challenges, our own problems. And so when we focus on those good things, then it becomes a much easier path and we get much more accomplished. The light dispels the darkness. So I'll open up the mic for questions, but also for stories you can share when you made a conscientious decision.
You're breaking up, Rabbi.
Chaplain.
Pardon?
You're breaking
up. Your voice is breaking up.
Checking my internet. How is it now?
Better.
I could hear you.
So open the mic for please share a story of when you conscientiously decided to focus on the positive and do something constructive and how that dissipated the darkness.
You mean other than crying over the lemons and making lemonade?
Exactly. An example of that.
That is the example.
In your
A
lifetime,
good one.
in your experience, personal.
Oh boy.
So I'll prompt an idea. Bob, you used to play hooky.
I used to what?
Play
No.
hooky.
Play hooky. I don't even know what that means.
And you learned a lot about the Museum of Science and Industry downtown
Ah,
Chicago.
yes. Yes. I've I dealt with.
Can I turn off the recording?
Pardon me? I
Do I need to
I
turn off
may
the
have told
recording?
the story. I may have told the story. I was graduating from grade school in Chicago. And I was 12 years old. Those were the days when children were safe on public transportation by themselves.
Yeah.
We all remember those days. Anyway, I was working and I had money. So I don't know how I got away with this, but instead of going to school for a week, I left the house when I was supposed to go to school. But instead of going to school, I went and took a bus, and then another bus, and then another bus, and ended up going to the Museum of Science and Industry.
Bet you learned a
Oh,
lot.
right. I lived up in West Rogers Park. We know where the Museum of Science and Industry is.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, it was free in those days. And that's what I did. And I got home about the time I would get home from school. On Friday of that week, I got arrested for truancy. Kid wandered around the museum by himself all week long. It was pretty obvious. They called my father to come get me. And I thought I was dead. Anyway, my father did come down. He came down from the Loop, down to the police station at the University of Chicago, and got me in the car, said, Bob, how long have you been doing this? Figured, not a good time to lie.
Huh.
So I told him the truth. I told him the truth. And my dad was a very wise man. I was very fortunate to have him as a father. Both my parents. But his response to me was, Bob, I'm sure you learned more than you would have at school, but you can't do this again.
Yeah.
That was it. That was the
Yep.
end of the discussion. Now we're talking about 70 years ago this
Mhm.
happened, and I remember it like it's happening now. And I never did do it again. But to me, it remedied a problem that I was having going to school, going to the museum. I was bored to death in school, and I loved the museum.
Yep.
It solved so many problems. And the message that my dad finally gave me in addition to that was, and you have a job to do, Bob. It's your job to learn if necessary in spite of your teachers.
There you go. Yep.
Another one that I have not forgotten. So it's redirection.
Yep.
What it amounted to for me.
Good story. Good story, Bob.
And I think, you know, it's a good example. In so many ways, it's a good example of this idea of focus on the light and don't deal with the darkness, right? Your dad could have gone the other way and focused on all the negative things, and you know, there could have been punishment and grounding and all that stuff, and could have been rightfully so, but he chose not to go there, but to take that idea and say, I'm sure you learned a lot. You can't do that anymore, but your job is to learn even in the environment that's not good. And that's a life lesson.
It's lasted me my life so far.
I hope you've been back to the Museum of Science and Industry.
I have, and David, I'll tell you, in that week, I saw every single exhibit that the museum had. I listened to you remember the phones that you
Yes.
used?
Yeah.
I listened to every single one of them.
Oh my gosh.
I was in heaven. I loved it. And it ignited a lifelong passion in me. What a wonderful experience.
You remember on the main floor, they had